Welcome everyone back to my kitchen table. This one is a post-Wales Rally GB kitchen table, and my goodness me, what a rally we had in mid and north Wales. Do you know what? 6th year I think we've been based in North Wales, and every year it's delivered. It's got better and better and better, it really has. But in terms of the drama, in terms of the competition, well, it had a bit of everything, didn't it? Wales Rally GB, from the gearbox issues for Ogier on day one, to Neuville's off early on day two, and then, well, the drama. Tanak prone, lying outside his car on the ground, inconsolable after the issue that he had in Sweet Lamb, we believe. I've seen pictures, amazing pictures, of part of his sump guard buried in the jump on Sweet Lamb. And it does look as if he damaged some of the cooling system with that jump, and quite rightly they closed the car down, stopped the car immediately, and it saved it for the power stage. It worked out well, didn't it? You got 4 power stage points there, but it was a fantastic rally all round. The stages were great, the competition was great, as was the level of driving that we had, and it looked spectacular. It really did. North Wales at this time of year is absolutely beautiful, and thank goodness that we got a little bit of weather. Do you know what we could have done with a little bit less weather on Slate Mountain on Friday lunchtime? I've got no idea whether it was a mountain, whether it was a marshmallow mountain or a slate mountain, because I couldn't see anything. It was absolutely dreich as dreich can be. Wet, foggy, horrible, and such a shame, because you know what? I think that would have been quite a decent spectator stage. It was very short, clearly, and quite challenging. But a real shame that we didn't see an awful lot of that. But what we did see of North Wales was beautiful. But let's talk more about what came out of this rally. Well, what it's done is it's reignited, clearly, Ogier's chances in terms of the championship this year. Listen, it was a mistake from Neuville that gave Ogier the opportunity to get himself back in the championship. What was interesting for me was Neuville's comments. Remember, he went off the road in the Sweet Lamb half-run stage, wasn't it? Into a ditch, thank goodness, those fabulous GB British supporters. But they might not have been British, I don't know where they were from, but fantastic supporters, fans who were there, who got him back on the road again. He only lost 50 or so seconds. But what was interesting for me was what he said at the end of the stage. He said, look, I've been pushing beyond the limits all year. And it's remarkable that I've only made this one big mistake. And he's absolutely right. He is absolutely right. He then kind of repeated that. And what I think he was saying was, look, we've got some work to do with this car. What was really interesting for me was that on the Friday morning, all 3 of the Hyundais struggling for handling. The car was understeering really badly. Now, that seems to be a feature. The Hyundais are either untouchable or they struggle. And they're untouchable as a team, or they struggle as a team, and all of them struggled here. Similarly, all of them struggled in Finland. But whether the car is performing, I almost said badly, that would be unfair, but not the way Neuville wants it, or whether it's performing exactly how he wants it, you still get 110% from Thierry Neuville. And do you know what? We saw that in Corsica, where he really struggled to get to grips with that car, and he put everything on the line there. And quite remarkably, he managed to hold it together to the end of the rally to pick up points. Similarly here, everything on the line, fighting really hard to stay in that fight at the top. He'd said to me Saturday morning, my intention is to put a bit of pressure on Oit, when he was a fair bit behind Oit. The chasing pack were very close behind Neuville, but he very much was looking forward to fighting with Tanak. It didn't happen. He made a mistake. He made a mistake as he saw it, because he was pushing beyond perhaps what was acceptable. I think what will come out of that is that there's some work to do. There's a little bit of work to do. I think the Toyota team have taken a big step forward in terms of their performance and their reliability. Okay, we'll, I'm sure, find out a little bit more about what happened to Tanak, but it wasn't really a reliability issue. There was maybe just a funny angle of approach, a bit too much speed. I don't know quite what happened there, but I don't think we'll call that a reliability issue for the Toyota. Toyota does now look very reliable. and it looks very fast and very, very competitive. Tanak was, barely breaking sweat in GB. He has reached a plateau and a level which is just an absolute joy to watch. And the others are having to chase hard. Goes back to my point. I think Neuville was, in some ways, implying that there's work to do with a Hyundai. They have got quite a bit of catching up to do to give him the machinery to match the Toyota. But for me, what was really telling in GB was Ogier. Do you know what I expected? On Sunday morning, 5 seconds ahead of Latvala had a fabulous opening stage of the morning. The gap was down to practically nothing, wasn't it? And then Latvala led the rally by 3.4 seconds, I think it was, after the first running of the Ogier stage. And I thought, hang on a minute, this has got, it's got kind of hallmarks of Rally Sardinia all over again. Remember, Ogier had 5 seconds of a lead in Sardinia, and Neuville was the one who just kept nibbling away, and eventually beat him. And there just didn't seem to be a response from Ogier in Sardinia. I thought, this is going to happen again. And then we had the first run through the Great Orme, and something sparked in Ogier, because those last 3 stages from him on Sunday, we haven't seen that level of performance, that level of desire, that level of passion from Ogier for a couple of years, I'd have to say. It was almost like the Ogier of old, and I loved the Ogier of old. I loved the angst-ridden Ogier, when the world was against him, and he was still winning. When the FIA went with this ridiculous, championship leader, first, 2 days in a row, on this Friday and the Saturday, purely designed to stop Ogier. What did he do? He kept beating them, and he kept winning, and he had a fire in his belly. And that's what drove him on. And do you know what? That fire was reignited on Sunday morning. And it was a magnificent victory for him and for M Sport, and such a timely victory for M Sport as well, with a great deal of uncertainty about their relationship, their ongoing relationship with Ford, in particular Ford Performance. There's been a lot of talk of, the difficulties that M Sport seem to be going through just now. Ogier was very vocal in what he said about his move to Citroën. He was very, very vocal, very honest about it. He said, look, as far as he was concerned, it's one side of the story, but here's the issue. We're only hearing one side of the story. But as far as Ogier was concerned, Ford weren't prepared to commit to developing that car further, the kind of budget that was needed to match the Toyotas, to match potentially where Citroën might be next year and where Hyundai might be next year. So Ogier is gone. So that win for Ogier, great for Ogier's championship, and really strong message to Ford Performance as well. Look, nothing wrong with this car. This car is still capable of winning. A little bit of extra money, and we can win again next year. But can Ogier win this year? 100%. Absolutely. Tanak can still win, and here's my bet. Tanak will win the next 2 rallies. But it's out of his hands in some ways, isn't it? Road position is going to be a huge issue going into Spain, because you don't want to lead the World Championship, leaving Spain by anything less than 10 points. If you've got anything less than a 10-point lead, it's twitchy bum time when we get to Australia. Because you won't win first on the road in Australia. It is almost impossible. Has been done before, and the man who consistently defies that belief that first on the road can't win in places like Mexico, in places like Australia, in places like Sardinia, is Sébastien Ogier. But would you feel comfortable with anything less than a 10-point lead? You'd have to say maybe anything less than, say, a 7 or 8 point lead, because the difference between winning and being second is 7 points, 25 to 18. But what we've seen, particularly with the Hyundais this year, and Thierry Neuville, when he's been first on the road, that really loose surface doesn't suit the Hyundai, and he has really struggled. Never mind to get second or third place, he has struggled to get 4th, 5th and 6th place. So what are we going to see? Are we going to see some tactical final stage jiggery-pokery in Spain to avoid being first on the road in Australia? Highly possible. But let's look at it. The man with stuttering momentum, But the man with supreme confidence is Tanak. And as I say, I think he will win the next 2 events. Whether that's enough to win the championship, we'll have to wait and see. The man with momentum and renewed belief, and perhaps who is in the best position, is Ogier. The man who perhaps now is beginning to worry, the man who knows that he can know, well, none of them can make mistakes, but absolutely Neuville, because remember, Neuville was in a good position middle of last year, and then had a dreadful run through, I think it was Finland, Germany, Spain, and that absolutely blew away his chance of the title. So is Neuville looking back to last year and thinking, oh, is history repeating itself here? Possibly. It's an interesting dynamic, isn't it? And as I say, road position in Australia will be a huge thing. Road position in Spain in a couple of weeks' time will also be massive. First day on gravel. You know, and as we know, listen, it's pouring with rain. They're testing in Spain today and it's pouring with rain. It might well rain come Rally Catalunya. And if it does, Neuville will have the best position. But should it stay dry, and there's a greater chance, I think, that it'll be dry than wet, then Neuville might well struggle being first on the road. Ogier will struggle a little less, but Tanak will struggle least of our top 3. So it's an interesting dynamic, and as I say, watch very carefully what goes on Sunday kind of morning, Sunday lunchtime, in terms of, well, if they're all still there competing, which is, you know, on the evidence of recent rallies, you wouldn't put a lot of money on. But if they are, it'll be interesting to see what happens. It is going down to the wire. It is going down to Australia. I'm absolutely certain of that. Technically, Neuville could win the championship in Spain. Highly unlikely to happen. I think we will have all 3 of them going to Australia with a chance of winning it. And Rally Australia this year was always great. It will be magnificent. Can't wait for that. So, as I say, you know, hugely impressed by Tanak's continuing coolness, calmness, level of performance, which is right up there. Impressed by Ogier and the fact he stuck to his guns. He didn't chuck it all in when he had that gearbox issue. Stuck at it. Set some great times on Saturday, and we saw the Ogier of old on Sunday. Man I'm a little concerned about is Terry Neuville. Just a little concerned though. Just a little. I don't think he himself is concerned. He still has this cheery, chappy, really positive persona. But, you know, is he beginning to feel a few little butterflies in the tummy? Is there any self-doubt creeping in? Well, if there's one whose self-doubt might start to creep in, only because of circumstances, it would be Neuville. It's fascinating, isn't it? Let's wait and see what happens there. Now, listen, the other thing that really kept us all occupied on Rally GB was driver moves. Oh, my word. Listen, you know, the rumour mill went into meltdown on Thursday when Chris Meek was spotted at Manchester Airport. Well, what was he doing at Manchester Airport? Well, it was obvious, wasn't it? He was on his way to see Malcolm. Oh, no, he wasn't. He was on his way to see... Tommy. Oh, no, he wasn't. He was on his way to see Michelle at Hyundai. No, he was off to have a cup of tea with Mr. Boudard at Citroën. No, wasn't doing any of those things, surprisingly. He was off to the States to watch some other sporting event in the States with Paul Nagel. But you know what? Chris Meek is the one that everyone is talking about. Is there a seat for him? Well, my understanding is that clearly he is talking to Toyota. What we know is that Lappi is off. We know that. We expected an announcement last week. It didn't happen. We now expect an announcement next week, around about the 18th. We think Lappi will be introduced as the second driver in the Citroën team. And I think that is it for Citroën this year. I think it is 2 drivers. If Abu Dhabi stay involved, there will be 3 cars on certain events. Not on all events. Sheikh Khalid will be driving them. That third car, I suspect. So we expect Lappi to be announced. That means that Breen, sadly, and through no fault of his own as far as I can see, is looking for another team. For me, Breen, the natural fit is Toyota. I would like to see Breen getting a shot at that Toyota seat. But you know what? Tommy Mäkinen is doing the most amazing job at Toyota, and he's doing it by confounding us at every turn. He does things differently. He does the unexpected. He does things that we all, well, not that we all, but that we occasionally scoff at, but then turn out to be right. So expect the unexpected from Mr. Mäkinen. you know, it really depends on what he thinks he needs. He's got two drivers capable of winning the title. He's clearly got an obvious number one in Tanak, who you could argue, and you could quite justifiably argue, is the best driver in the championship just now. You've got Latvala, who is now prepared to support Tanak in that number one role. And if Tanak has a bad start to the year and Latvala has a good start, those roles could reverse. We'll have to wait and see. So what does he want for his third car? Does he want, and this will depend, I suppose, on where the pressure from above comes. Are Toyota hell-bent on a manufacturer's title? Well, if they are, then what you need in that third seat is a solid driver who will deliver consistency for you, who will be there as your insurance policy, and a good insurance policy. And there are a number of drivers who could fulfill that role. Clearly, there is Hayden Paddon. You could argue that there is Elvin Evans, potentially. And there is Craig Breen. And for me, Craig Breen would be the man if that's what Tommy wants. But maybe he wants a winner. Maybe he wants 3 winners in his camp. Maybe he wants 3 dynamic drivers who can all astound and amaze us on stages. Well, there's only one man for that, then. It's Chris Meek, clearly. For me, that's the most unlikely scenario. The third scenario is a development driver. Might he put a development driver in there? Well, that's a big gamble, because you might hit lucky with a development driver and find someone that can find a good pace very early on in the year and can consistently deliver you 5th, 6th, 7th places, which will be enough to act as an insurance policy. You know, there's talk of Hooten, and it's not going to happen. For me, if he goes down that route, Rovanperä will be the man. Without any question, Rovanperä will be the man. Well, you might say he's got a contract with Skoda, which he does. But don't forget who his manager is. His manager is Timo Joki, the most experienced, the most wily manager, some would argue the best manager in World Rallying. And I very much doubt whether Mr. Joki will have signed a contract with Skoda that didn't allow, should a factory team offer Rovanperä a seat, that didn't allow Rovanperä and Joki to break that contract. It's a pretty standard clause that a lot of young drivers will put into a contract with, if you like, a lesser team. You know, should I be offered a World Rally seat with a World Rally team, full-time drive, I retain the right to break my contract. So if Mr. Mackinnon does decide to go the adventurous route, and my goodness me, it would be adventurous, don't be surprised if Rovanperä is there. Rovanperä, I think, is earmarked for perhaps 2020, which is why the likes of Paddon and Breen and others who are hoping for that seat at Toyota might only be offered a 1-year deal, because I think they will keep the option for sure. If they don't have Rovanperä next year, the option will be to have him the following year. But let's just talk quickly about Rovanperä on GB, because he was breathtaking on one stage, and he did enough on that one stage to convince me that all of this talk and this hype that has accompanied Rovanperä for the last year or 18 months is bang on. I sat on the fence, and I wasn't prepared to get as excited as some people about young Cali, because for me, we'd seen touches of brilliance, but not enough, and it was way too early to proclaim him the next Finnish World Rally champion. But, Sweet Lamb, Halfren stage. Oh my goodness me. You know, you'd imagine it was impossible. It's a 29k stage. He is 40 seconds quicker than the other R5 cars. 1.3 seconds a kilometre. This is the likes of Tiedemann, Greensmith on his own territory, and others. Guys who didn't necessarily have any issues in that stage. And he was 40 seconds quicker. And that, for me, was his standout stage of the year. And it was phenomenal. And from then on, really didn't have to do an awful lot other than just go out, enjoy himself, learn the stages and protect his lead. He didn't. He built his lead, and it built and it built and it built. And it was a faultless drive from Rovanperä. And for me, you know, we're in a kind of, in some ways, we're in an Ogier situation. Remember when Ogier won the junior title, and it was, you know, in the Super 1600, and the question mark was, can he go straight into a World Rally car? Probably not. Well, he did. And within a relatively short period of time, he was right up there. And within, again, a pretty short period of time, he was winning rallies. Rovanperä could do that. Rovanperä could do that. Could he potentially do it next year for Mackinnon? Yep, he could. So don't write off Robin Perez's chances of going to Toyota next year, and don't be surprised if he does. Yeah, that's about it for driver moves. M Sport, well, we just don't know. As I mentioned earlier, this very strange situation between M Sport and Ford Performance. Don't forget Ford Motor Company are in a difficult situation. Things aren't perhaps going as well as they would like. They're laying people off around the world. They're making cutbacks. And when you're making cutbacks and people are losing their jobs, it's difficult to give one man an enormous salary. And we understand that Ogier is on an enormous salary. Difficult, really difficult when people are losing their jobs to do that. When factories are being closed, it is difficult to justify motorsport. But my point is, you use motorsport to reignite, your sales, to energize your workforce. If you use it properly, you've got to use it properly. So many companies invest millions in motorsport and never have the success to actually utilize that involvement to the max. Ford have got a ready-built success. They have a ready-built success. What is lacking is their ability to capitalize on it, as I see it. But as I say, you cannot argue. When people are being laid off, you can't argue with budget cuts. And if those budget cuts come from motorsport, well, they come from motorsport. So what it does is leave Malcolm in a very, very difficult situation. I don't know who he'll have next year. My understanding is Malcolm's relationship, and I've talked a lot about this with Meek, is thawing. There has been, as I understand it, conversations between Meek and Malcolm Wilson. Positive conversations. If I had to bet, that is where we will see Meek next year. We will see him. Malcolm will struggle, but Malcolm has struggled in the past and has pulled the rabbit out the hat just about every time. I really, really think we'll see M Sport next year. I keep my fingers crossed, and I hope and I pray that we do see M Sport next year. But if Malcolm goes rallying, Malcolm will go rallying with the intention to win. And in Chris Meek, there is that opportunity and that glorious possibility that he can win any event. So we'll wait and see. There are a lot of drivers that are a little concerned right now. Here's the thing, Hyundai, very quickly, no change is my anticipated move there. They will have exactly the same setup that they've got this year. But still an awful lot to fall out before the end of the year, to shake down before the end of the year. It's going to be fascinating, isn't it? It really is. It gets more and more interesting as the weeks go by with the championship. We're still waiting on the calendar for next year. That'll be exciting. And clearly we're still waiting to see who has a seat in the championship next year and who doesn't have a seat in the championship. Whoa, gets me far too excited. Folks, thank you all very much for once again watching and hopefully enjoying my kitchen table. If you are watching on Facebook, do me a favour, press the share button and share it. It'd be lovely if you could share it. The algorithms on Facebook have gone all very strange, and a lot of people aren't getting to see this anymore, the kitchen table, which is a shame, because as you know, it's well worth seeing. If you're watching it on YouTube, thank you very much. A lot of people subscribing after the last one. Just press that little button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would really appreciate it. So if you're on Facebook, give it a wee share. If you're on YouTube, press the subscribe if you don't mind. And then you won't miss the next episode of my kitchen table, which I suspect will probably be next week, because not hearing anything, but I think the next 7 days could bring us some news that is worthy of the kitchen table. Thank you all once again for joining me at my kitchen table.